Hi everyone, I'm Cheryl. In this problem, we're asked to solve the equation and check our solutions. Well, I have 3x times the quantity x minus 1 to the 1/2 plus 2 times the quantity x minus 1 to the 3/2 equals 0. Typically, what I'm going to want to do is to factor this, but sometimes it's a little confusing because I see that I have a common factor of x minus 1, but it's raised to a fractional exponent. So before we begin, I just want to review a little bit about how we factor in general. So I'm going to say recall factoring. Let's start with something simple, like x cubed minus 2x squared. When I factor this, what I'm looking for is I want to factor out the x that has the smallest degree. So in this case, I'm going to factor out x squared because it's the smallest of the two x terms. So I'll factor out an x squared. What's left? Well, I can take x cubed and I can subtract the square. So I'll take 3 minus 2, which means I have a single x left. So that means I have x left. In the next term, I have my minus 2, and if I subtract the exponents, 2 minus 2, I get 0. So x to the 0 is just 1. And now it's factored. So again, remember that you're going to factor out the lowest power of x, and to figure out what's left, you're going to subtract exponents. All right, so now let's move over to our problem, the one with the fractional exponents in it. I notice that both terms have an x minus 1 in them. So x minus 1 is going to be factored out. However, to what power? This is x to the 1/2 power. This is x to the 3/2 power. The 1/2 power is smaller, so that's the one that I'm going to factor out. So what's left after I remove the quantity x minus 1 to the 1/2? Well, looking at my first term, the only thing left is the 3x. Again, if you want to think of subtracting exponents, 1/2 minus 1/2 is 0. So you have x minus 1 to the 0 power, which is just 1. The second term is the trickier of the two. If I remove x minus 1 to the 1/2 power out, I still have my 2, but what's remaining? X minus 1 to what power? Again, I'm going to subtract exponents. So 3/2 minus 1/2 is just 1. Okay, so now that I have that fractional exponent piece factored out, I can continue and write this as x minus 1 to the 1/2, and then I'm going to have 3x plus 2x minus 2 equals 0. All I did was distribute my 2. Then I have x minus 1 to the 1/2 times the quantity 5x minus 2 equals 0. Okay, I now have two things multiplied together that equal 0. So one of them has to be 0. Either x minus 1 to the 1/2 is 0, or 5x minus 2 equals 0. Solving each of these equations for x, I'm going to square both sides of this equation and get x minus 1 equals 0, and then adding 1, x equals 1. For my second equation, I'll add 2 to both sides, and then divide both sides by 5. Now, in a problem like this, you have to make sure that you check your answers because you may get extraneous solutions. So let's go ahead and check those equations. So let's first of all check x equals 1. So I'm going to plug that into the original problem. And when I do that, I end up with 3 times 1 times the quantity 1 minus 1 to the 1/2 power plus 2 times 1 minus 1 to the 3/2 power. Now notice 1 minus 1 in both situations are 0. So I'm going to have 0 plus 0, which equals 0. And that's what it was supposed to equal. So x equals 1 is a solution to my equation. Now let's check x equals 2/5. All right, so I'm going to take 3 times 2/5 times the quantity 2/5 minus 1 to the 1/2 power plus 2 times 2/5 minus 1 to the 3/2 power. All right, now right away I can see a problem. 2/5 minus 1 is a negative number. Remember, when you're raising something to the 1/2 power, that's like taking the square root of it. And because you can't take the square root of a negative number if you're in the real number system, x equals 2/5 turns out to be an extraneous solution. So I'll cross this one out, and the only real solution to my problem is x equals 1. I hope that was helpful. Thanks.